Hi, I'm Dave Stelzel, and welcome to the Vendor to Advisor program. I just want to give you a couple of minutes on what this program is all about. So, of course, we have the book, The House in the Cloud, and you may have seen that. That's probably our most popular book. But in 2012, I put together a book called From Vendor to Advisor. And in this book, what I'm doing is I'm capturing all the different lessons that I learned when I was working for a large international organization and working very closely with Price Waterhouse. In fact, so closely, I had an opportunity to join the Price Waterhouse team after leaving that organization. And it was early on in my career, but what I discovered was that I was actually more interested in the process that the partners and the senior managers were going through as they sold large projects to these organizations. So frequently, if you're in sales, you've been in sales meetings before where you're bickering over a rate like, $100 an hour versus 125 or 150 versus 175. And here I was sitting in a meeting with people who were talking to C-level people about millions of dollars, $10 million to do this, $5 million to do that. Well, a change order worth $1 million. And the response from the executive management was, okay, sure, yep, yeah, we'll do that. And there really was no question as to whether or not they would move on or if they trusted this organization. And when they're tossing around these numbers, it occurred to me I should be taking notes. And so that I did. And as I went through my career, I began to apply a lot of the principles that I saw them do. And what I titled this as were the secrets of high price consultants and how they do it. And as I began to move through my career and began to apply these principles, I saw fruit. And so a few years ago, I decided to put together a program to explain these principles. So the Vendor to Advisor program is broken up into two different training modules. And so you kind of go through them sequentially. We've got kind of the foundational concepts and then a more advanced program. So in the program, you're going to discover things like how do we rebrand ourselves as high-priced consultants? And I don't mean with the stigma of someone who is nickeling and diming the client, but somebody who is actually worth those higher rates. Okay, how do we set fees? So that's a big issue, right? Do we do it by the hour? Do we do it by the hour with a cap? Do we do it by the hour with no end? Do we do it fixed price? Do we figure out all the arrows, add them up, and put a price on it, or do we look at value? And if we do, how do we do that? There are a lot of different strategies to pricing something, but if you want an immediate pay raise, the best way to do it is to figure out your price strategy and to get away from nickeling and diming and discounting all kinds of things. What about proposals? How do you use proposals effectively to drive that deal to a close? What's the difference between closing the business and proposing the business? And how do you make that proposal process go much more smoothly? When I started out my career, I noticed that the average close rate on proposals was maybe 10, 20, maybe 15%. But as I've applied some of the principles that I learned from these consultants, my proposal close rates have moved up into the 80s, 90s, and even 95 percentile. And in this training, I show you exactly why that is. There's a big question. How do we move from IT into executive management without making IT people angry? Right? How do we do that? And so there's a strategy that works in moving up and gaining access to not only the executive suite, but also getting out into the end users and finding those power users that actually need the solutions that you provide. We talk about presentations. How do you move an audience? How do you address a boardroom? What kinds of presentations should you be doing? What media do you use? Do you use PowerPoint? Do you use flip charts? Do you use whiteboard markers? And it turns out that different audiences demand a different approach. And so we cover all that in here. So we're really talking about personal habits and character and the way you present yourself and your personal branding, but then also looking at the skills all the way from how do I prospect, how do I get the attention of people, how do I bring them in through my funnel, which is a lot of marketing science, but then how do I move them through that whole proposal process, how do I go through the discovery process, where do I use assessments? All these questions need to be answered, but it's not just doing it, it's knowing how to do it in a way that moves that client one step closer to the close. So if I were to say, what is From Vendor to Advisor all about? It's about moving away from a box product commodity sale to a trusted advisor relationship where you're no longer bickering over prices and the little details about the project, but they trust you to show them the way. What do consultants do? They look at the here and now, the current situation. They look at where the client wants to go, and then they create a path that goes to that destination. And they put a value on that destination that the client agrees with so that they can then price the movement from A to B in a way that the client and the provider both win. It's a win-win situation. So as you go through this program, what you're going to find is it will transform your business because it will transform the way you conduct business, and it will also transform the way your prospects and your clients view you and the value you bring to that organization. So I hope you'll dive in, I hope you'll work at it, and I hope you'll collaborate with us through our online forum as you go through the program so that we can help you make this transformation.